You know, we often think of frailty as just a number, something that happens when you hit 70 or 80 or 90. But what if it's not about the number of candles on your cake? What if it's a specific medical condition, a kind of biological aging that we can actually fight back against?
So that's the big question we're tackling here. Is feeling weak and slow and just exhausted an unavoidable part of getting older, or is there something we can actually do to prevent it, or maybe even reverse it? Let's follow the science and see where it takes us. All right, first things first. We need to get a handle on just how big of a deal this is. Because with populations all over the world getting older, frailty isn't just some personal concern. It's quickly becoming a major public health challenge.
And this chart, wow, it really tells the story. According to the English Longitudinal Study of Aging, only about 6.5% of folks in their 60s are considered frail. But just look at that jump. By the time you get to age 90 and beyond, that number skyrockets to 65%. That is a tenfold increase. It just accelerates so dramatically with age.
Okay, so if we're going to figure out how to fight it, we first have to really define our opponent. What exactly is frailty syndrome when doctors talk about it? So the official definition talks about a decline in our functional reserves. Now, what does that mean? Well, think of it like your body's emergency battery pack. As we get older, that battery can start to drain, and that leaves us way more vulnerable to health problems and makes it a lot harder to bounce back from things.
And doctors have a really specific way to measure this. It's called the Fried Frailty Criteria. As you can see, it's not some vague feeling. It's a checklist of 5 concrete, measurable things. Losing weight when you're not trying to, feeling exhausted all the time, having weak grip strength, walking really slowly, and just not being very physically active. If you check 3 or more of those boxes, you get a diagnosis of frail.
And this brings us to a super important point. There's a huge difference between your chronological age, that's just how many birthdays you've had, and your biological age. Your biological age is the real age of your body's systems. And frailty? Well, it's one of the best signs we have of that biological age. It's a clue that your internal systems might be aging faster than the calendar says they are. All right, now that we know what we're looking for, let's start our investigation. Our first big clue in this whole story comes from a major study all about the power of simple physical activity. This was called the Life Peace Study, and what they did was pretty straightforward. Researchers took over 400 older adults who weren't very active, and they put half of them on a year-long program of walking, strength, and balance training. The other half, the control group, just went to some health education classes. And the results? They were pretty remarkable. After just 1 year, more than 19% of the people in the control group were frail. But in the physical activity group, only 10%. That's almost a 50% reduction in how many people were frail. I mean, that is a huge win for exercise. But, and this is a big but, when the researchers dug a little deeper, they found something fascinating. While the exercise program was fantastic at getting people to be less sedentary, it fixed that one criterion, it didn't really move the needle on the other 4. Not on weakness, exhaustion, weight loss, or slow speed. So that leads us to a pretty critical question, right? If a general exercise program only fixes one of the 5 symptoms, is it really the silver bullet we're hoping for? The evidence here kind of suggests we need to look deeper. Okay, let's move on to our next piece of evidence, which adds a really interesting twist to the story. This one moves away from just physical symptoms and looks at what's happening deep inside the body, at the level of the immune system.
So another group of scientists ran a study where they put frail adults on a 32-week exercise program. But instead of just timing how fast they walked, they took blood samples to look at key markers of immune system health, stuff that's known to decline in people who are frail. And here is the shocker. After 8 months of exercise, nothing. There was no significant change in those crucial immune markers. The exercise just didn't seem to reverse that underlying aging of the immune system, a process called immunosenescence that's so closely tied to frailty. So, why the conflicting result? I mean, what gives? Well, it could be the program wasn't long enough. But a more compelling idea is that while exercise might be great for prevention in healthy adults, it might not be powerful enough on its own to fix the deep-seated biological changes in people who are already frail. And all of this leads us to the final breakthrough. If just general exercise isn't enough, and it doesn't fix the underlying biology, then what does? This is where the type of intervention becomes absolutely critical. A study in 2016 decided to get really specific.
Instead of just telling people to be more active, they designed what's called a multi-component program. So this wasn't just walking. No, this was the whole shebang, a targeted mix of aerobic exercise, strength training, flexibility work, and even proprioception, which is your body's sense of balance. And the results? They were just astounding. After 6 months, nearly a third, 31.4%, of the frail people in this special program had successfully reversed their frailty. They were no longer considered frail. And in the control group, 0%, not a single person. This just goes to show that the type of exercise is paramount. And this table from another study takes it even one step further. It compares different types of interventions against each other. And as you can see, while physical exercise by itself was really effective, it ranked second, it wasn't number one. The most effective strategy of all was a combination approach: physical exercise plus nutritional support plus cognitive training. So after looking at all this evidence, from the definitions all the way to these different clinical trials, what's the final verdict in our investigation? Can we really fight frailty? Well, here are the key takeaways. First, frailty is a real diagnosable condition. It's about biological age, not the number on your driver's license. Second, physical activity is absolutely a cornerstone. But, and this is key, it's not a silver bullet. The type of exercise matters immensely, and these multi-component programs are way better. And finally, if you want the most powerful effect, you have to think beyond just exercise and go for that multi-domain strategy that brings in nutrition and cognitive health too. And that leaves us with one final thought. Frailty isn't some inevitable fate we have to accept. It's a condition we can actively fight. So knowing that a targeted, holistic approach really works, the real question becomes, how do we start building that stronger, more resilient future? Not just for ourselves, but for everyone in our community.